This episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. The Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Starving Artist Brewing. Starving Artist Brewing may be a small speck on Michigan's beer map, but they say big things come in small packages. A brewery who really puts their money where their mouth is, supporting underground artists far and wide. Making delicious beers with the simple belief that you should judge beer, not people. Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BRUTALLY and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give
up. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is the returning Austin Meade, who has a new album getting ready to come out. And it's interesting to kind of look back on where the creation of this album started. I mean, literally the last time Austin was on, he was in the studio recording this record, recording the songs that would end up on this record. And it's interesting because someone like Austin, you know, you may not be aware who he is. You may hear him on like this podcast and go check out his music and stuff. But if you start following him on socials, you'll see that he never fucking stops working. Like, he's constantly doing shit. Like, whereas most people would have been like, all right, I got a record out and I'm done. Like, you know, he was already working on the next one. And I think that just really showcases the drive and the work ethic of Austin as a person and as an artist. And it's really inspiring and refreshing to see something like that. Someone who honestly could rest on the work he's already done, but he doesn't. And he understands that in this industry, you only have a finite amount of time to make an impact, and you need to keep working and grinding to get whatever you can get. And in ways, seeing Austin via social media and so forth, and hearing him in some other interviews and seeing, you know, just this output of content that he constantly is in charge of creating, it makes someone like myself on the other end in another medium really kind of take notice and just go, well, fuck, I mean, if he's doing it, then I need to keep going. And I think there's that symbiotic relationship of inspiration at times where it's what keeps all of us going sometimes, when maybe like the last thing you want to do is, you know, put in the work for another episode or put in another late night. I mean, case in point, you can kind of probably hear in my voice, I'm kind of a little congested and fighting off a little bit of a cold. And, you know, last night I had a work meeting that kept me out kind of late and then ended up getting up probably like 5:30 to do a podcast, just due to the drastic time difference between me and the guest that was supposed to come on. And I sat there for 45 minutes and they did not show up. And I remember just being so tired and so like bummed. I was fucking bummed. Like, why did I put forth all this effort? Why am I sacrificing sleep? Why am I doing these things? Excuse me. And it's the grind. It's what you know, and it's the things that no one sees that I think makes the journey worth it. I mean, I know that there are others that would probably be like, well, to make this time work, I'd have to get up at this time. I'd have to get up at like 5:30 to get up and be ready to talk to someone at 6 o'clock so it's more convenient for them. Someone might go, fuck that, I ain't doing it. It's not that important. I'm not willing to sacrifice sleep or my time or whatever. And to me, I think that's kind of the journey I've been on as of late, is the grind. It does get, literally, it grinds you down, health-wise and so forth. But at the end of the day, you know, we only have so much time on this earth, like Austin kind of says in this chat, and, you know, make the most of it. And I really, today of all days, I really realized that, you know, that is one of the truest things. You know, you got to work, you got to put in the work, and you got to do it when it's not glamorous and no one's watching, because you know it's the thing that will get you through and will get you to the next thing. And it's all of those that make up who we are. So with all that said, let's get into my chat with Austin, and I'll see you all on the other side of it.
So I mean, first of all, it's funny to think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you were literally in the studio the last time you were doing this. Is that essentially what was being worked on? Was the record you're about to put out now then?
Yeah, we were already recording Abstract Art of an Unstable Mind, like whenever Black Sheep came out. So I try to stay ahead of the game as possible. So yeah, we're actually getting ready to hopefully go work on another new one again. So trying to pump it out, because you never know how long you're going to be given time to create shit, you know. So yeah,
it's funny because when I was thinking back to that chat, at the time I was like, oh, it's crazy that you're already working on something when the thing that is catching and that you're here to promote is already, it's not even out, and you're already working on the next thing. And it's always interesting because, you know, I've been talking on the podcast a lot about how artists typically are always in the form of creating something. Whatever they're going through currently is what is inspiring the next thing we're going to hear. But it's interesting to think that you're not even putting out the thing yet that you have already worked on. And then you're like, and let's just keep going. Like, I feel like that's got to be creatively really, really exciting and just really fulfilling, because you're getting to kind of exist in both worlds. And a lot of times when you get to a certain level of touring as much as bands do, and like yourself do, you don't get the opportunity to do one. It's one or the other. You don't get the opportunity to do both. So I feel like it only fuels one side of the thing that you are passionate about, either playing live or recording and writing. So the fact that you get to do both at the same time and kind of coexist is very, very uncharted territory from what I see in the musical landscape now.
Yeah, I mean, we got really busy this year, and so, you know, I haven't been able to go back in this year. I mean, if it was my choice, I would have been in the studio already and had the next one knocked out. But we've been really busy playing, like, really all over the country in a lot of new areas, and so, I mean, that takes time. We used to, you know, leave for mostly weekends or leave for, you know, 2 weeks at a time, and now, man, it's like whenever we leave, sometimes we're gone for like 6 weeks, you know, which is nothing compared to some big tours. But then we'll come back home for a couple days and hit it again. But I'm just glad people are like picking up on the Black Sheep record even right now, and a couple of the new songs that I put out for the, you know, the current record. But yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to stay as productive as possible. It's kind of hard to live in both worlds because, you know, people are just hearing the stuff that I wrote like 3 or 4 years ago. So there's like, feels like a log jam of creative time, like from whenever that song is born to when it's recorded. And then you have to go all through the business bullshit, you know, depending on how big your team is and how long you have to wait to put out stuff. You know, that's like a big, just like waiting period of shit, you know? So, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I love the Black Sheep record. I still love playing all those songs off that record, and I'm looking forward to this new one. It's a lot harder to play because we all got a lot better as musicians over the last 2 years. And so now we're like, oh shit, we got to get back to our chops, because we went back to, you record the new record and then you go back out playing and you play a couple new songs, but you're not going to go out and play an hour's worth of the new record that no one knows, right? You could pick a couple of songs, but you got to play songs that are out that people know that they like and are going to be able to look up on their phone if they've never heard you before, right? So we're just now digging back into this record, Abstract Art of an Unstable Mind, and like essentially relearning these songs that we wrote and recorded over about a year and a half period. So it's been interesting.
And that right there is kind of the interesting thing about it, when I realized perspective is interesting when you get it. And it wasn't until, doing some of these, I was backlogging 10, 15 different podcasts, and they're 2.5 hours, whatever, but they'll come in spurts. But by the time when I was doing kind of a weekly schedule release of them, it's like there would be times, and I'm not going to go back and listen to 2.5 hours of me talking to someone. But it was this thing where, I'd go back through and I'm trying to remember like what we're talking about, or I'd put out the episode and someone would be like, oh, it was really cool when you talked about blank. And I'm like, huh? Like to think back, maybe 2-3 months ago in my life where I'm like, yeah, what was going on then? What did I talk about? And it's like, it sounds kind of shitty to be like, oh, I don't remember what I was doing, but it's like, I was so excited about doing this because this in a sense has become almost like a form of therapy for me, much like I feel like songwriting is for a lot of musicians, where it's like, it's coming out of you. You have to get rid of this thing and put it out into the world. But then when you do that, it's kind of no longer yours, and it's up to everyone to interpret it how it is going to be. But it really is just kind of interesting to think about how we, or I'll put it more to the point, musicians exist in all three facets of past, present, and future, and sometimes all at the same time. It's like you have to go back to remember where you were maybe when you were writing these songs, when you're playing them or talking about them in an interview, but then you're also living your life now to inform the songs you're going to write that we'll hear later, and then you go right back to the beginning of the process. And it's just a very weird way to exist, I think.
Yeah, a couple things, like in older interviews, I always listen back and I'm like, wow, I sound like a complete jackass. So, because I was really like, I guess, some people still think I'm green or like a new band, but I've been doing this for about 10 years. So I think it's just like the mentality and attitude has changed a lot over the last couple years, especially just being so busy with it, which is, great. But I always think, looking back on interviews, I'm like, damn, what the fuck was I saying? You know what I mean? But I think that's the transition of any human being. I think change is good, right? And yeah, as far as like creating the new songs and living in them, like with this new record, I wanted to be like a movie director, just on the, audio form of that. So a lot of the songs were written with like videos or, miniature movies or TV skits like in mind, and just kind of repeated the characters, which kept me interested in it a lot more than just writing about myself, because I think that that's really fucking boring if you just write about yourself all the time. I mean, you've got to really think you're an interesting person to write 5 records in a row about yourself. So, I stayed away from that, and that made it a lot of fun. So me and David Willey, my lead player, he's like my main creative partner with a lot of this stuff. And man, we would just sit. I'm in my living room right now. We would just sit on the couches and stay up late, and I would just try to write some of the funniest shit in the songs, where if he was rolling on the ground laughing, then I knew it was going to be good. Because, I mean, maybe we were hysterical because it was so late, but also we kind of like knew the backstory of these characters that were in my mind. And so that's how this record differs a lot from the previous one. And like I said, just like the difference of a couple years on the road and really playing like all the time, and not only trying to like outdo yourself, but like trying to outdo your buddy in the band. You're like, oh yeah, you can play that. Well, check this shit out, bitch. And just, it's like a fun competitive thing. I'm super competitive. And so, especially with my friends, that's what always keeps us going and keeps us driving and trying to go for it. But, Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's weird to like create something, and then you wait to put it out, and then whenever you're touring, you're still playing those songs. I mean, I think about bands that have been around I mean, for instance, we're on a ZZ Top tour right now, and this is their 50th anniversary, and they're still playing some songs that are like, I don't know, about 50 years old, but they're 40-ish years old, some of these songs. And, I mean, they still look like they're enjoying it and having fun. And so I wonder what I'll look like at that point, in my head, like how I'll feel playing those songs that will have. I mean, that would be amazing to have that opportunity, right? To play music and tour for 50 years. That's pretty incredible. So hopefully we get to be that lucky of human beings. And I hope that we enjoy it that long too.
Well, I mean, a few things to that. I mean, the one thing is I don't think anyone, by and large, I don't think anyone that has a sustained career like, a Kiss or a ZZ Top or, a lot of the bands that have had decades spanning long careers, I don't think they ever thought they were going to do that. And I think that's part of it is honestly understanding that there's going to be peaks and valleys, and you have to ride out the valleys before you get back to the peaks. If you get back there, interestingly, I was talking with a friend yesterday, and what you said kind of reminded me of that, of like, if we're lucky. I think there also becomes this point where you just have to be real with yourself and what you're going through in your career, whatever it is that you're working towards. I had kind of made a comment about, this podcast, we were approaching 400 episodes 6 years in, and I made a comment the other day. I woke up kind of in a funk, and I was just like, what is the end goal? Is there an end? Like, do I just stop doing this? Like, what does that look like? Who would I become then? And then I just kind of prosed it to Twitter. And then I had a bunch of people like, oh, it'd be really sad if you ended the show. And I was like, really? It would be? Is it? I don't know. But then I was kind of thinking about the thing where I was like, I talked to some other people in the industry, and they're like, oh, if you do this and you hashtag things, and, I think about all the advice I get given. And I'm like I was telling a friend, I was like, dude, I'm fucking almost 40, dude. I've never clicked on a hashtag. I've never liked a hashtag. And if you tell me you have, you're probably full of shit. And I was like, I don't get a lot of things that people say are going to make you successful in something. I think a lot of people that say these things aren't willing to honestly say that they probably started off on second or third base, and they have opportunities that are given to them that most people will never get to help them get to that next level. And I said, honestly, if I'm being real about where I'm at and putting it into a band perspective, I'm probably at a small club band level where I'll probably be able to sustain a career that's livable, but you're never going to see me like on the arena tours. I might be like the first of 4 on an arena run getting dog shit for money, but I'm doing it for the exposure. But that's as far as I'm getting. But I'm going to enjoy the ride because I'm further along than I ever thought I'd be. And there's no shame in that. But I don't think we as people, especially when we're kind of in the thick of things, I don't think we tend to think, if this was as good as it gets, is that okay? Because I think it kind of would either destroy I need to be better, and I need that mentality of like, I have to be better and do better. But sometimes I think that's what drives people into the ground, is that they never reach that next level. And instead of enjoying where they're at and realizing how far they really have come, they just fucking tank themselves because they're like, well, I didn't get here, so it's a failure. And that's not how that exists. I don't think that's how we should look at things like that.
Well, I think the quicker you fail, the quicker you learn what not to do. So you have to fail to figure out what not to do the next time. I mean, that's all my career has been, but I mean, I have big goals, man. I mean, I'm trying to sell out arenas. I want to be doing that, but with my own honest music and not, giving in to whatever the latest and greatest thing is that people say you're going to get famous for. I mean, there's some times where we do earlier spots at festivals, and there's people playing after us that are like TikTok stars, and that's cool and great for them, but like, we're like in a different realm of touring, like we're a bunch of road dogs that have been doing this for a while. I mean, we travel around in a Sprinter, which is miles and miles ahead, greater than the old vans that I've been in, but I'm on my 4th van. So like, I've been in vans for a long time, man. Occasionally we get lucky and get to hop on a bus for a little while, but we're just now getting to that level. But yeah, I mean, I think you gotta appreciate the small victories along the way, and that's really what keeps you going. I mean, we just started doing really well, like in venues and towns that I've played in for 8 or 10 years. You know, we just started selling out some smaller venues that are anywhere from 500 or, you know, sometimes 800 or 900 capacity. So that's like a big step for us, because we used to be really happy if like 40 people showed up. And we're still in that position in some places around the country. Like we've been doing our own headlines, you know, on actual, you know, smaller tours where we're going and playing clubs. And sometimes you're playing in Pittsburgh on a Monday and you're like, damn, I hope 100 people show up. And then that's your goal for the night, right? Is 100 people. And then the next week you're opening for somebody else who's been doing it for 50 years that has 5,000 people. So you're just kind of enjoying the differences of every day is like a new chapter, especially when you're traveling that much, because you're also dealing with, you know, the different places you're traveling, all the equipment and the mechanical side of things like tires and, you know, anything that can go wrong on a van or trailer. So those things definitely keep me really busy. It's a grind, but you know, one day I won't be the guy that's underneath the hood of the van anymore. So that's a upcoming goal.
You know, it's funny. I feel like when we last chatted, I feel like there was so much like I'll call it kind of this blurring of genres kind of started becoming more of a thing. And I feel like in more recent times, like you're looking at someone like Jelly Roll, you look at some of these other artists that are kind of blurring, you know, rap and country or this like alternative country kind of thing. I did see a comment on one of your newer videos. Someone's like, I don't know how I was listening to country music videos and then this popped up, but I'm really thankful it did. And it's funny because like, to me, I feel like music is becoming such a thing where it's kind of weird to think that people are still like, I only listen to this, and this is like the thing I am known for. I'll ride and die for that genre. When there are people, and having been so many people that blur the lines of what things are and just kind of making interesting, fun music, that it's funny to see people still kind of trying to be like, well, you're not really 100% country, but you're not really rooted in this, like still trying to figure you out. And it's weird because, you know, I feel like with someone that's been doing this for so long, and that's kind of the fun thing about you, is that you don't know what you're going to get with you. And that's kind of what keeps me as a listener and as a fan on my toes. Cause it's like, where are you going next? How are you going to incorporate what you've been doing into what you will be doing? And then where do you go from there? And I find it odd that it seems like there's a collection of people that are poised to really break out and kind of become something bigger because they're not willing to just be in this little niche thing anymore.
I mean, I hope that's what we are. That's what I've always, I won't say, I don't know that it's necessarily a goal, but I've always felt like we weren't just the thumbprint of one genre in particular. Ever since I was doing my own little records in trailer house studios in, 2013, 2014, I still feel like a lot of it was like rock based, but we were playing a lot of country venues and opening for some country folks because I knew that I could get in front of people that way just because of like where I'm at regionally, and it just made sense touring wise to do it. But I mean, that's why the Black Sheep record was called Black Sheep, because all the people that were, not all of the people, but a good majority of the folks that had country venues or were country booking agents, they were like, yeah, you're too rock for us. We can't do anything for you. And then the guys that were rock, rooms and rock booking agents, they'd be like, you're too country to play here. We can't do anything for you. So I was like, well, fuck me. Right. And which, that would go back to the failure thing, right? You got to figure out, one, how to get thick skin, and two, you just got to, every time you hit an end in the road, like you just got to figure out that that's going to lead you to somewhere new. You just kind of change your course and direction, but keep swimming upstream. that's, you know, what I've tried to do. But yeah, I mean, dude, I'm a huge fan of metal. I'm also a big fan of pop, you know, and rap, and huge, you know, rock fan in general. I'm a big songwriter fan. So I just do what feels good. And, you know, if I'm sitting there, like, you know, kind of bobbing my head to the music and feeling like it's good, or feeling like the storyline is interesting, whether it's a big drawn out storyline or just a play on a couple of words, then that's, you know, what keeps me writing that, I guess, non-genre thing, if that's what you want to call it. You know, it kind of, it's funny because growing up in like South Texas and Central Texas, you know, you have a lot of churches around, and there's, you know, you got your Catholics, you got your Church of Latter-day Saints, you got your Baptist, and then there's one called non-denominational, which I always thought was funny because that is a denomination in itself, right? It's like, what is that, right? It's like, oh, we didn't like anything, so we made our own, but it's not a denomination. And maybe that's what we're doing with our music. I don't know, man.
That's a shirt right there. Non-denominational music.
Yeah. But I mean, if you just look at the last 2 years of touring history, I think there is something to be said about that. Like last year, I don't know if we had done it last time we talked or not, but we did a Seven Dust tour. We were supporting those guys. And then we did quite a few like rock and metal festivals, which were freaking awesome. And then we also came back home and did a bunch of like regional country / Americana festivals, you know, and then did some headline stuff, and then go out and support a big country artist, go out and support a big rock artist. I mean, we got to do a show with Shinedown, a couple with Jelly Roll, and then it's like we're doing a ZZ Top tour right now. So that's, I guess, Southern rock, you know. I'm not really sure what genre that is, but I grew up listening to that all the time. So there's not really one exact thing that we have to get stuck in, which I think is great. But that's also sometimes the dagger in the heart is whenever people don't know where to put us, so they just kind of, it's too difficult to figure out what it is, and then they just chunk it, you know.
Well, I feel like that's kind of the thing that's been interesting lately. As I mean, you look at someone like Amigo the Devil, and it's like, here you have someone who on record is one thing, but when he tours, it's him himself with an acoustic and a banjo. Very recently did he get to the point where he started bringing out a full band. So it's interesting that it's like the tours that you have for them, it's like, okay, who do you put someone like that with? I don't know. Like, he's opened up for Dropkick. He's played with Hatebreed. Like, you know, he's kind of in the same world where it's like, you don't fit anywhere, but you kind of fit everywhere. But you have to have people who are willing to take, I guess, the risk and the journey and go on that with you. And I think the crazy thing is like, you see some of these kind of fringe kind of style artists, and it's so fun to see everyone having these successes. Like, I love seeing, you know, Danny or Amigo the Devil, like playing these festivals, and like, there's just as many people as there would be maybe for some of the big, like the mid-level tier bands on these like big rock fests. And, you know, he's not playing anything, and the whole crowd is singing along to his songs and stuff. And you're just like, there are probably people who are like, who the fuck is this? But I'm a fan. I don't care. This is a whole ass vibe, and I'm caught up in it. And I feel like that's where the fun thing sometimes of being I'll call it the sore thumb, sticking out on a bill. Like, if you're on a Seven Dust bill, you sound nothing like Seven Dust. So chances are people are going to remember you more than if there was a Seven Dust sounding clone in that same spot, where it'd be like, just sounds the same. You might play Happier Alone. Someone's like, I fucking like that. I don't know what that is, but let me look it up. And now you got a new fan, because you don't quote unquote belong, and you're new, and it's exciting, and it makes you pay attention because of how different it is versus what you're seeing the rest of the night. And I mean, another, you know, interesting question that I would ask, I mean, with some of the names that you just were talking about, and maybe they're not out to talk to when you're on the road with them, but I mean, I would assume, you know, if you're doing some of these longer runs, you got to at least, you know, hi, how are you doing kind of a thing. But it's like, you know, something like a ZZ Top or even the Seven Dust guys, like if you're getting to talk to any of them, like, are you one to take advantage of the opportunities and kind of pick their brain about, you know, how they've traversed the career that they've carved out for themselves?
Yeah, I think that whenever you're doing, you know, a couple weeks, you eventually see them enough times where, I mean, they can't look past you like every day for like 30 days. You know, I mean, I guess they can, but man, they've been really cool though. Like the Seven Dust guys are really awesome. LJ would always come out and hang out with us and say what's up. And he's always in a really good mood, like in front of people, which I don't know how in the world he does it, but he's a super positive person, like all the time. It's what it seemed like to me. Really funny. And yeah, I mean, tour is a stressful thing, right? Because you're like away from your family. You're traveling usually with a bunch of dudes that, you know, you're around 24/7. And so everybody needs their own personal space. So sometimes you like go eat by yourself randomly while you're waiting for a venue to open up or waiting for sound check, and you run into somebody else from the other band, and then, you know, y'all have a beer or whatever it is, right? And talk for a little bit. But I think maybe early on, I'm sure early on I asked a bunch of annoying questions, and sometimes I probably still do. But I think it's more about just like meeting the person and just kind of like talking to them about just life and shit that's not always related to the music business first, and kind of, you know, becoming their friend, I guess, or, you know, establishing some kind of a relationship, rather than just being like, hey man, nice to meet you. So how'd you do this with your business? You know, because those are, whenever somebody does that to me, which I get like messages a lot about that, or, you know, people meet me at the merch table, and I can't imagine on my level, like where I'm at right now, like what those guys are dealing with every day. Just people just constantly poking and annoying them. So I don't know. It's always, I don't know. I try to just like enjoy it. I'm super thankful. I always, you know, say, hey, I really appreciate you having us and giving us the opportunity to be here. And then I either just let them do their own thing, or, you know, if they want to talk, we'll shoot the shit about how cool the town is or what the last show was like, you know, something like that. But I'm trying to you know, let the suits do more of the business these days. You know what I mean?
It's interesting because I kind of don't feel like that's where you were when the last time we talked. I feel like you were very much, and again, I'm trying to put myself back like into that conversation. I feel like I remember you kind of being more like gung ho, like I got some people behind me now, like let's fucking see what we can do with more resources and tools behind me now. And it's interesting to kind of hear how, like, it seemed like you kind of wanted to shake things up and kind of still do you the way you were used to doing it, but also now having a team of people with you as well. And it kind of sounds like maybe you've learned to let go more of that side of things and not being as involved, and letting those people that have been doing this and are professionals in that side kind of doing more of their thing while you focus more on what you do best for you.
Well, I think, I mean, it's still hard for me to let go of stuff all the time, right? Like I'm still running a business, and like I was saying, I mean, I'm working on the trailer and Sprinter all the time, and, you know, everything. Like merch is a really big thing for us. So like I'm always invested in merch. Like I've just, after hitting it that hard for, you know, the last year or so, you know, I find myself stressing out about shit that I can't control. And then I'm like, well, would I be more productive right now, you know, fixing this issue that I can control, and, you know, handling this? And don't get me wrong, I still get stressed out and worked up like all the time, but maybe you just caught me on a day where I'm just sick and fucking tired of it. But, you know, I'm still very involved. I mean, like I'm every day on the phone about this. This is my life. This is what I do 24/7. But I have definitely learned, especially over the last year or so, it's like, yeah, there's people that are literally paid to do certain things to make your life easier. And so if too many chiefs are in the room and there's too many people communicating, then sometimes it's just like overwhelming and just shit gets lost. And so I'm trying to kind of step away from that so much because I'm trying to get back into my creative space because this record's about to come out and, you know, I've got songs that I want to finish up for the next one. And so like, I need to get back to being the artist, which I used to never understand, but man, as you were talking about with time, right? Time goes by faster as you get older and there's like less, it feels like there's less time because your list just keeps getting longer. And then sometimes like shit that you thought was on your to-do list, it just ends up just leaving your list. And then at some point you might get back to it. And if not, oh, well, you know, so I'm trying to kind of live between those things and spend more time like on what I can control and get done quicker while still having fun. But man, I've been golfing a lot. I love playing golf. Spent a lot of time on the lake this year before we got really busy with touring. So doing that, I mean, I got, you know, a couple dogs, a house, and a wife. So there's like a lot of shit going on other than just this, you know?
It's funny. Part of what you were saying about like just learning to let things go, I was like, I don't know if you go to therapy, but that was a thing that I went to therapy for over the pandemic, was just like, I would overthink things to death. I would worry about things that haven't even happened, but I've already solved that problem and the 17 other ones that I've manifested from that haven't even started, don't exist, and probably never will. But it was always in the pursuit of, well, I want to be prepared for whatever happens. And at least if I think about it, then I'm not going to be caught off guard by the thing, whatever it happens to be. And therapy was like the first thing, you know, I think I've said this on the show a couple of times, but I got handed homework at the end of a session, and it was gears. So it was like the big one in the middle, and it was like, write the main problem. And then from there, you're supposed to fill out the little cogs around. And I just looked at it and I go, oh, I get it. If I don't make all these other problems, then the one problem will remain and doesn't spin all the other ones out of, like, keep them going. Got it. And it was just like, simple as that, is just seeing the thing and then just kind of going like, you like have to just deal with what's in front of you and take the information in that you have, make an informed decision, and then see what happens from there. Like, you can't keep living in the what ifs. And I think that's so, you know, like I said, at being almost 40, being married, being like all these things, it's weird to me to think that it took this long and something as easy as, you know, a therapy session to kind of be like, you don't need to tackle all the what ifs right now. Like, just live your life and be happy in the moment and do things that will bring you happiness and just kind of exist. And I don't think that we tend to do that, especially when we're doing something in a creative medium where it's like, oh, I gotta meet this deadline. I gotta do these things. Like, I feel like, because I just had this the other day, actually, like, I took a random, like, my Mondays are my days off. My wife took the day off. We sat around, we did fuck all of nothing. And I had a blast, but there was a part of me in the back of my head that was like, okay, like, if at any point, like, we're watching a bullshit show I don't want to watch with her, I should go work on the podcast. I should do something on the podcast. I should send out emails. I should be doing something. And then I just really, like, had a thought where I was like, dude, stop. Just be right now. Just be. You don't need to go do something. You don't need to look for an escape or a reason to go do something else. Just be happy where you are. And it's sad, kind of. I think that it has taken me this long to realize that, but it sounds like you are finding that yourself, even like where you're kind of realizing you need to find a way to balance all of these things and that you can still give yourself to all these different endeavors, but you have to be happy with yourself and the things you're doing first and foremost.
I mean, I've never done therapy, but that's why I play golf and go out on the lake all the time. So that's kind of my thing, but everybody's got their own thing, you know? So it's like, I'm too far into this thing. I'm not going to go anywhere. Like, I'm not going to leave what I'm doing. Like, I found my career. I mean, I have way too many tattoos to go be an accountant now, probably. So I wouldn't want to do that anyways. But, yeah, I mean, I found my career and just got lucky that I kind of committed to it early on. I'm not 30 yet, but I'll be there soon. And so, yeah, man, I'm just like, get to travel and get to see beautiful places and try not to stress out too much. You know, the biggest stress that I get is from traveling and from like logistical issues, you know, with I mean, dude, vans and sprinters and buses, I mean, you're talking about driving them thousands and thousands of miles every week. So, if you're the one in charge of that, that's already a big old pile of shit you have to deal with. Not even including like what time you're supposed to be there and load in and then be in a great mood for all this touring, all the time. So, been trying to just like enjoy the shows too. I used to get really stressed out before shows. Every now and then I still find one where I do that, but I usually find that if we're about to go on stage, if I just say, fuck it, I'm just here to have a good time, then like if there's small stuff that goes wrong and I just react to it naturally rather than getting mad about it, one, it usually goes way smoother on stage, and you kind of laugh at technical difficulties or whatever, and I don't know, I just end up leaving the show with like a bigger gratitude that anybody showed up rather than me just stressing out about every single little thing. Like, I missed this note, he missed this note, couldn't hear the vocal worth the shit, or, what happened to this drum hit here. So, I mean, I definitely like take a mental note of those things, like mistakes, I guess, during the shows and people's attitudes like around it. But I'm just trying to be more, I guess, give less shits about the things that don't matter. So, yeah.
I tend to find sometimes I feel like it's the accidents where it makes people be more present and in the moment. So I feel like I mean, there are songs that I know how to play and I know how to play them. And I think sometimes you just go into this autopilot mode and then you'll like flub a note or something like that. You're like, oh, fuck. And then now all of a sudden now you're paying attention kind of to what's going on or what you're doing. And I feel like when I watch bands, I think that's usually some of the funnest moments is actually when someone makes a mistake or whatever. Cause then you see someone kind of look at someone else, get a smile on their face. Like, I fucking caught that. And then it's just like, it's sad that it kind of takes a mistake, I think, to kind of get people to crack smiles and have fun. But I also think that's what brings the human element out of something that has become kind of so mechanical at times. And I'm not saying you do this, but I think by and large, these are the songs. I played them a bunch. I know what I'm doing. I might even have my stage banter kind of picked out, or I might have a thing ready to go. Like, that's a thing I do every night. And I think it's those things that take everyone back out and kind of bring it back to what it is, which is we're here for a live environment. And it's not supposed to be cut and paste, insert new city here. It's supposed to be different and unique, and each show should be unique and different. And I think it's when those things happen that I think everyone kind of remembers that and kind of gets put into the like, oh shit, this is a different show now than it was last night because of this happy little accident that just happened.
Yeah, we write a new set list every night. And so there are some certain pairings of songs that like stay in there, but it's also, I mean, depending on the tour we're on, right, there's going to be a lot of different song choices, especially when you only have 30 to 45 minutes on some of these opening spots, which is really short for me because we're used to playing like our headline shows are like almost 2 hours. So to take a fourth of that and be like, shit, what do I want to play versus what does the crowd want to hear, and kind of blending those two things together. And sometimes they are the same thing, but I want to play a lot of new shit. But if we only have 30 minutes, that's only like 7 songs. So I can't go out there and play 4 new songs and only give them 3 songs off the Black Sheep record because they're going to, I mean, they might pay attention, but they're not going to be like, it's not going to be as much of a sing-along experience, which is really what I enjoy. But again, on some of these tours, like, nobody probably knows who we are, so it really doesn't matter, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. Today's Beer Minute is brought to you by Starving Artist Brewery, who share a simple belief: you should judge beer and not people. Today's beer is from Rochester Mills Beer Company. It's their Imperial Toasted Marshmallow Milkshake Stout. Coming in at 7.5%, this beer hits all the right notes for a nice fall stout. Notes of graham cracker, vanilla, marshmallow, and chocolate really bring a nice smoothness to this Imperial Milkshake Stout. Thanks to Starving Artist Brewing, who remind you to support your starving artists, and please, always drink responsibly. And now, back to the show. It's funny because even listening to the 2 new singles that you put out for this new album, it's funny because I feel like from Black Sheep, where I kind of was introduced to you, and then even kind of going back a little bit to what I had found before on the last chat, I feel like there's things that I'm kind of identifying as uniquely you. Like, I feel like I usually call it kind of the t-shirt worthy part of a song. Like, here's the hook, basically. Here's the line that as soon as you see it, you're like, that's clever. I'm going to remember that. And then it becomes kind of the fun part you get to sing along. I think I had said in the last chat, I wish you'd fuck me like you gave a damn.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's tongue in cheek. It means something, but like, I could also see that being on an Austin Meade shirt. And then people might be like, what the fuck is that? And you're like,
oh, it's on a shirt and it's on a koozie and it sells very well. I'll tell you that. But yeah, I mean, I've always thought about that with writing, especially the last 2 records. Like, I want there to be, well, I guess, man, since the first record, I feel like I've gotten better at it, which you would hope so over, 8 years. But yeah, pretty much every song on this record is that in some form or fashion. I mean, the title, Abstract Art of an Unstable Mind, that is a song off there, which I actually, on the record, I actually titled it abstractart.jpg, so it looks like it's an image whenever you pull it up on your computer, but it's it's actually a song. But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think about the track listing off the top of my head. Yeah, I mean, Violation Delight is the first song on the record, which I thought those 2 words together were very unique, and like, I had never heard violation and delight next to each other. So I wrote a storyline about that, which is like basically the action of calling up your ex's best friend to get back at her, that kind of a thing, which I thought that was a cool, like, fun play on words. Rose romance, loser mentality, varsity type, which varsity type was almost called downfall lover because the tagline is, fuck 'em anyways, I'm a downfall lover. And that's just kind of like about being the loser in the party, which once you see that the other people have peaked in high school, you're like, haha, I'm a downfall lover. I love to see this come down, like a real asshole thing. But I thought it was fun to write about. There's Queen of the Letdown. There's Late Night Letdown. Those kind of tie together. Rain Dancing, because Willie, our lead player, he was like, we were writing this song that I wanted to sound almost like a Whitesnake riff, like almost like 80s hair metal rock riff. And we were just going back and forth about, it's like, man, I want to do a rain dancing song, like something that sounds like a rain dance. And he was kind of laughing. He's like, no, you're going to get canceled, dude, because you're not actually Native American, so you can't write a rain dance. And I was like, fuck that, dude. We're going to call a song rain dancing. Like, this is art. We can do whatever we want. So that song has this long outro where it's like a lot of that kind of thing going on, which was really fun to put together. And for me, it was like a visual thing too. I'm trying to think of what else is off there. That's pretty much every damn song is there's like one that might not be worthy of a t-shirt itself, but it just felt so good for that being the song title. And then, yeah, there's like, the record is supposed to sound like it is a radio station. So there's some little interludes.
I noticed that in the videos. I was going to say you've pulled kind of what, and it's funny because I've been listening to this record a lot, and sorry to cut you off, but Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf. That record exists, but it's so unique because the point of the record is that it's supposed to sound like you're switching through local radio. So you're going to have kind of a classic rock. You're going to have kind of like, it is what it is because it's supposed to sound like you're listening and driving through, just scrolling through radio stations. And to me, I noticed in the 2 videos already that there's a song of yours playing in the background when you get out of the vehicle or whoever is getting out of the vehicles. And I was like, okay, this feels like Songs for the Deaf in that perspective, but I also had no clue if it was meant to be a bigger thing that you're supposed to pick up on, like, hey, by the way, this is actually a little homage to whatever, like this bigger idea that's going on?
Yeah, so those 3 videos were tied together with the characters. And so I wanted to tie those videos together. So the 3 videos I'm talking about, Varsity Type, Red Roof Estates, and Rose Romance. We did all those videos like within like a couple of days, and then we had a couple of random shoot days over the next month, but they were done in a very short amount of time, and I wanted those to have repetitive characters that told a story about those characters. So Varsity Type is like me walking into a party being like the kid with the loser mentality, and then you've got like the girl in the bikini that was supposed to be very reminiscent of like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, that kind of a thing, or like The Sandlot. She's like the cheerleader chick, right? Whatever you want to call it, dream girl. And then you've got the jock, like the varsity type guy with like the shades, and he's like, he throws me into the pool. So that's in Varsity Type. And then leaving that one, you see the characters. It's supposed to be like a couple years later or whatever, and I'm actually playing a show. The varsity guy shows up at a show. He's got like truck nuts on the back of his truck, and he just gets hammered. And the main waitress was that like cheerleader chick, right? And he ends up knocking her drinks over after everybody in the club's already pissed off at him for just being like belligerent, you know, and being annoying. And so he kind of gets what's coming to him in that video, and she beats him up because he accidentally flips her drink, bloody nose, whatever. And then there's like a really short interaction between me and her at the end of the video, like an outro, just to kind of show that there was like something there between the characters. And then Rose Romance is it's about that main character, the loser guy. He's still doing his career, I guess, and he has flashbacks of past relationships with her and stuff. And the whole time he's like saying he's not going to go back to her because she's treated him so wrong. And then at the very end of the video, you see her back in the car with him, and you're like, damn it, dude, you went back to that? I cannot fucking believe that. So you're cheering for this guy. You know, I'm cheering for this character the whole time. And then at the very end, I'm let down by him, which that idea in movies always cracked me up, is like whenever you're really cheering for the good guy and then at the very end, like it doesn't happen, or they do something that kind of pisses you off or whatever. As you know, as a viewer, I'm like, damn, I hate that. But as a writer, I love that. The feeling of like connecting with the character and then being disappointed by that character's actions. You know, it's a very real life thing. So not always like the loser. It's not always like the knight in shining armor or whatever, you know, and ends up winning, or the loser becomes like the hero. Like that person can still be a piece of shit, which is what this whole record was based off of. There's a song called Dial Tone, and this is just how the record started. There's a chorus that I wrote that says, memories of when we were young, before the alcohol and the drugs. Do you ever think about how it was when I was somebody you loved? And that's about like reconnecting with someone that you were friends with or close with whenever you're younger, and then just realizing like where life has taken you, and realizing that like, you know, you're kind of a piece of shit. And that's how the whole idea of the repetitive characters in the record started.
I think there's two things to that, because I had actually watched the videos out of order, but it was interesting because being able to, I mean, watching movies, watching films, obviously with, you know, directors like, you know, Kevin Smith and Tarantino and so forth, who like to use the same characters, kind of create a world, bring in characters at different points, and kind of be like, oh, there's that guy again from this thing, but I haven't seen him in a little bit. It's funny because I definitely feel like that was the story arc of between everything, even though I saw it out of order. But even I was like, oh, that's the girl that was in this one, but I guess now they're dating. But again, because I watched it out of order, I didn't put all the pieces together as it should have been. But it was this thing where, as you were talking about kind of the characters and the story and everything, and you're playing the role in it, this character, it does kind of make me wonder if you ever step back and you're just like, why am I playing, like, is it autobiographical at any point? Like you say that you're kind of storyboarding these ideas, these thoughts based on words, based on things, to get the creative muscle going that you're then going to write a song about. But have you realized maybe that there's some part of this that's definitely still autobiographical, even if on accident?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, And I think that's what makes these songs mean so much and are so fun. You know, they're the loser mentality. I mean, like, I I grew up athletic and doing my whole thing, but I was also like a band nerd, right? So, I mean, there's plenty of that, plenty of times where, and I moved around a lot, so I was always like the new kid. So sometimes that was cool, right? Sometimes it was like, oh, this is like a surfer kid with long hair. Then sometimes it was like, look at this little punk ass, we're gonna beat him up, you know, whatever. It's not a woe is me. I'm glad that I got my ass whipped a couple times growing up because it made me a little tougher. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it that's there's a lot of thumbprints of me or hints of me in there, definitely. I mean, probably in every song, yeah, there's a lot. But I like the idea of going deeper into that character, and like, I don't know if necessarily fantasy is the right word there, but like being able to be creative and be more interesting, right? And being like, I always say, like, I felt like a movie director when I was writing this, you know. So hoping that I can visually, you know, make those things connect. But no matter what happens, I know that in my mind when I was writing this record, like, I felt like I was directing a movie of these characters, and some, yeah, I totally relate to, and I feel like I might be that guy. But it reminds me of growing up and, you know, watching movies growing up, whether it was whatever it was, right? Power Rangers comes on, you're like, oh, I'm the Red Ranger. That's me. Like, that's how I feel in some of these songs, right? And I think that can change depending on the day. I mean, uh, there's a lot of freedom in that, right? Not always feeling like you have to be the same person or feel like the same person every day. So then we're getting into a whole deep thing there that I can go off on forever. But yeah, that's a whole nother story.
I just think sometimes, you know, and I guess it's funny because, you know, like I'll use kind of the two examples of the people I mentioned, but it's like, look at Kevin Smith. He creates these worlds, he creates these characters based on people he actually knows. And the story has been told, you know, countless times if you listen to him literally talk at any point. But it's funny that, you know, he gives himself the role of Silent Bob, and the motherfucker talks more than anyone I know. And the dude that, you know, Jason Mewes kind of doesn't. And so it's funny that you have this person who embodies a character, and when people think of them, they think of him as this, but it's like, you couldn't be further from that in real life. You know, even like, you know, Tarantino injecting himself into different roles, that it's like, I don't think you are any of the people that you portray in the movies you've been in, sort of outside Pulp Fiction. I feel like he sort of is that guy. Like, if someone were to be talking about movies, yeah, I know the fucking movie's good, I fucking made it. Like, I feel like that little piece of like how he was to Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta's character at different points, I feel like that really was Travolta. Or, I mean, I feel like that really was Tarantino. I feel like that's sort of how he is. So it wasn't really a stretch for him to play that. Maybe it's just dialed up a little bit more. But I think when we create these, I don't want to necessarily say alternate personas or storylines for ourselves, but it's just, I do see where it would be fun to take something and take it to the nth degree. I mean, that's kind of why I love wrestling, because it's people who are them. Like, the best wrestlers, the best characters are the people who are uniquely like, that's who you are. Now crank that bitch up to 11. And now that's like, I'm not The Rock, or I'm not Dwayne Johnson. I'm the fucking Rock, and I'm the best, and blah, 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 blah. And I'll call you a candy ass and all this shit. And it's like, okay, that's weird, but it's like, that's where it gets fun, because it blurs the lines of reality and abstract and fantasy and all these other things. And we don't really get a chance to do that very often as a creative endeavor. So the fact that I think that you're kind of trying to write songs almost from that as I've never really thought about, if I'm writing 5 records about myself, that I must think I'm really interesting. I've never thought about it from that perspective, but then I immediately started thinking of like so many fucking records where I'm like, God damn, that is kind of what that person does. And how have I never really thought about it like that? But no, I mean, it almost makes me wonder though, like, could you see yourself kind of in a non-musical sense? Is writing and or making movies something you would want to do or act or something like that? Is that a pursuit that you have, or does doing it in the music videos and so forth, is that satiate that itch enough?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be a part of a bigger project of writing. I've always loved writing ever since I was little. I was like I remember being in fourth grade, and I think it was my fourth grade writing teacher. You know, she would have us write, 2-page essays, and everybody would be trying their damnedest to include every single adjective they could, to stretch that thing out into 2 pages. And I would turn in like 3.5 pages and be like, I didn't have enough time to finish what I wanted to do. I just like kind of like going into that world. And I got away from that as I got older because I got busy with, trucks and hanging out with friends and sports and chicks and all that shit. But then, being able to like re-dive into like the actual creative writing, I mean, it's a lot of fun. And I think something that sparked that was me getting back into Arctic Monkeys a lot. Alex Turner is like one of my favorite songwriters because it's just so fucking unique. And it's really smart. Like the way he uses syllables, sometimes he drags on. You think a thought or a sentence is going to be finished like here at the end of this line, but it's not. He's still got to finish the word on the next line, and then it completes a thought. And I was like, damn, it's like math, but words. And then that's what makes my mind go bonkers, is whenever you do shit like that. And so between the pairing of odd words like violation delight or abstract art of an unstable mind, just loser mentality, like those things, those like slogans almost, right? Those are interesting slogans that you can dive deeper into. And kind of, like you were talking about gears earlier, it's kind of like a spider web. Like I come up with this idea of something interesting, whether it's a storyline or a couple of items, then boom. But I would love to do that, in the movie world. Absolutely. I don't think I'm a great actor, but I would love to help write the stories and be like on the storyboard side of things, and be able to come up with just ridiculous storylines and shit, because I'm not scared to make that character do some shit that people, they might think about it, it might be on the tip of their tongue, but they don't want to say it out loud. I don't give a shit. Like it's a character, it's not me, So that would be a lot of fun. I spend all my time like doing this right now and touring and trying to write and be creative and like building up what we have right now. And I think it's really important currently for me to keep doing that, because if I was to slow down, then like everybody else around me would probably slow down too. And like momentum is the hardest thing to keep in this business. So once you get a little bit, you have to fucking keep going and keep pushing. Like no matter how much you don't want to, whatever it is, like whether it's do a long ass tour or do all the paperwork for shit or write or do interviews, whatever it is, right? You got to keep fucking doing it. But yeah, maybe in like 5 years or so, I could see myself possibly getting into something like that. But it would take a really good team, to do all the things that I can't do as well. So it's a big picture thing for sure.
I'm interested. Actually, here's a very weird question. There's what I'm fairly certain I know what it is, but it was funny because there's not really a way to zoom in on the video when you're watching it on a computer. But during Varsity Type, at the very end with the condom, my first thought was, I was like, that's a shitload of cocaine. Someone was boofing it. But no, then when you're like, oh, I'm going to put that on eBay, I was like, I guess it's semen.
Yeah, it was actually coffee creamer, but it's supposed to be like, it's supposed to be like you just blew a load into it. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to sell this on eBay. Like almost like a joke at like, what would a rock star do, right? Like a rock star, what's the most ridiculous thing? Like, could you imagine like a rock star just being like, hey, here's my used condom and it's full. How much will you pay for it? Like, it's so stupid to me. I just thought that was fucking hilarious. But yeah, and I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure the label would have been pissed if there would have been more drugs in that, because they already said like multiple times, because there's like a bong in it, and they got all pissed about that. And I got like, my TikTok account got like put on a hold and like a suspension because I put a short clip of that video, and no one was even like ripping the bong, dude. It was just sitting there in the video, which is crazy, because then you have people on that app like ripping dabs and shit and being like, look how high I can get, and they don't block their accounts. But for some reason mine, I put up a piece of a music video that in my opinion is borderline PG to PG-13, you know what I mean? Like It just didn't make sense. Yeah, that app is, and most of the apps, they're just so fucking one side or the other on shit. They pick who they bully on, and they pick who gets to blow up and who doesn't. So, anyways,
Yeah.
but yeah, those outros are some of my favorite parts to do, and that actually started the first outro we ever shot like that was for Deja Vu, which was a song off of the Black Sheep record.
Is that the roller skating video?
No, that one's Happier Alone.
Okay.
Deja Vu came out after that, but we shot it before that, and it was like a really cheap production, and we wanted a funny outro, and we had just like hotboxed the van, and Willie was like, dude, he's like, if you're an aspiring actor, if you're an actor and the only gig you ever get is aspiring actor, like, do you think you made it? Like, if you were like actually an actor and then they came to you and like, look, we got this role for you. Cool. What am I going to play? Oh, you're going to be an aspiring actor. Then I just thought that was, I thought that was so fucking funny. And that's how I feel sometimes, like as a musician, like, what if you're just like an aspiring songwriter, aspiring musician, and like, how do you know that that's not what you are anymore? Like, are you always aspiring for that or what? And so I was just like, we got to put this on video. And so people love that outro. And so we started doing outros for like all the videos, which I always found fun because you could like include other members of the band or give a little snippet at what might be like the next, like the next song or whatever. Just funny shit, man. Like not taking not taking it too seriously. Like it's supposed to be fun. Like we're here to have a good time and like really enjoy what we do. And I think that some of the songs are really deep, like some of them are musically heavy and very lyrically deep. Especially in like the second half of this new record, I think Abstract Art is a really heavy song, and Darker Shade of Blue. There's quite a few like that I'm like, damn, that hurt. And off the Black Sheep record, there was Hurt You to Hear This, Settle Down, Black Sheep. Not everything is like this happy-go-lucky thing. So I just feel like it's more interesting to me whenever you can almost like have fun with such a dark subject, even Varsity Type. Like, I mean, it's literally drinking every day. It's an endless summer, lying to my face. I'm just another loser in the way, friendly discomfort. Fuck them anyways. I'm a downfall lover. That's like a very dark, place to be in your head. So it was fun to make a video that was so like, happy and just fucking ridiculous,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, and that's kind of what draws me to a lot of what you do is the duality of it, where it's like, it's clever. It's honestly reminds me of, in a completely different facet, but it reminds me a lot of like Keith Buckley from X Every Time I Die Now, where I'm like, that dude writes shit that I'm always like, God, that's such a great line. It's worded really well. It's smart. But then like when you start breaking it down, you're like, fuck, that's so dark. That's real shit you're putting in there, or like whatever. Like, I mean, there's also tongue in cheek shit. Like, hey there, girls, I'm a cunt. And then it's like, here's a fucking breakdown. So, I mean, it's like, there's the gamut of everything, but later in his career, in the last couple of records, I mean, I'm kind of getting goosebumps thinking about some of them. It's just like, it's fucking dark, and it's sometimes hard to hear it, but it's like when you kind of have a different tone of something around it, it kind of, I guess, softens the edges a little bit to where it's a little bit more digestible, and you don't realize that you're taking in something that is so impactful the first listen or the second listen maybe. And it's what keeps you coming back, is when you kind of go, oh. And then you kind of take.
I mean, if you go back to the line that you said you remembered from the last record, which is "fuck me like you," I wish that you would fuck me like you gave a damn. I mean, that's a really big moment in our show. A lot of times I put that towards the end of the set. Opening sets are different, but if it's a headline show and like they're there for us, like people are waiting on me to sing that line. And it's really cool because I can tell that they're just like, they've also, had a few drinks by the other night too. And so they're just feeling it. And it's like, I'm going to scream this line as fucking loud as I can. And I get to step away from the mic usually during that moment, which is really cool. I never thought that would be a thing. We wrote that sitting on a couch. Like,
Well, I think I'd even said at the time about that, the thing that I think I like about it is it feels like a buildup, and then when that line comes, everything kind of drops out, and then boom, right back into the song. So it's sort of that emotional push pull then release. So everyone kind of gets to have that cathartic moment of yelling this instantly catchable, like catchy saying, something that you can, if you know it, like once I said, you hear it the one time, and if you like once you hear it, it would be interesting to see it done live. Like if I go see you, like if you ever fucking make it to Michigan, I would love to see a room of people who don't know it versus people who do, because I feel like the people who do will obviously sing it along. But I'd be interested to see if people then are waiting for that line to come back so they could do it the second time, and it doesn't.
Yeah. We bring it back live a second time at the end.
Okay.
But yeah, I tried in that song. I tried to like, we're talking about the song "Cave In." I tried to top that line like as the song went on. So at the end of the next verse, it's like, do you still feel all right? Do you still have the nightmares that keep you quiet, ringing in your mind, or sticking in your mind, ringing like the church bells, Jesus Christ? And so it's like that nightmare is just like stuck in your head. And, you know, as the song has lived on longer for the public to know, like a lot of people will sing that line too. They'll be like, ringing like the church bells, Jesus Christ. And then you just see like headbanging going on, which is pretty cool when there's a lot of cowboy hats in the crowd. And then the next one is always wanted something real, handwritten letters, candle wax seal, Midwest American feel, the perfect life that they'd all love to steal. So like everybody wanted a piece of this perfect life, you know, that you were supposed to have. And, you know, that the same thing happens, like the music sucks out the perfect life that they'd all love to steal, and then a fucking heavy ass riff. And so I tried to like keep that idea going. It's just like that first one just stuck so much because it's so, I guess, offensive, you know, like,
well,
so
I think
that's,
yeah. I think that's kind of the thing that's so interesting. I've talked about this in general, and I think we actually touched on it a little bit in our first chat where I was like, I think there's something to be said where swearing almost, it catches you so off guard because you're not expecting it. And I, you know, as someone who swears all the time, it usually doesn't ever surprise me when I hear a swear word. I'm always like, oh, okay. But I think it's sometimes when you're not expecting it, and then, like I said, it doesn't come back, especially in a song, you're just kind of like, oh, it makes it more impactful. I think it's what swearing should be, and why I love swearing as a whole, because it's like sometimes, like, that's why, like, when speaking of hotbox and all that, sometimes I'll get high and I'll just think about a word before I go to bed, and I just think about it, and I think about it, and I think about it, and I'm like, who was the first person to say this? How was it? How did the person who said it to somebody else, how did they take it? And then how did it be able to be used for so many things? Like, fuck. Okay. What is fuck? Like, when I say it like that, it sounds stupid. Well, fuck isn't a what. It could be a person, could be a place, could be a thing, could be an action, could be a whole lot of things. And it's funny that, you know, I wish you'd fuck you like you gave a damn. Okay. If you were to say, I wish you'd, you know, you could have said, I wish you'd make love to me like you gave a damn. Wish you would have had sex with me like you gave a damn. Like, you could have said anything. And I don't think it'd be as impactful, but I wish you'd fuck me like you gave a damn. Like, I can hear someone using that in an argument, in a relationship, like argument, a fight or something like that. And that's the boiling point. Yeah. And that's the boiling point. It's like, wish you'd fuck me like you gave a damn. And it's like, okay, now we're really somewhere with something like, okay, now what? Now where do you go from there? Like, I want to know how the rest of that argument or that conversation went, because I feel like that's the real thing. And even as you said in that song where it's moving forward and you kind of redid the same thing, the same quote unquote trick, you know, there's the thing, Jesus Christ, like, boom, there's the thing that like this, your kind of the exclamation point of the statement. And it's funny to, you know, even listening to the song last night again, it's funny to see that, because it's like, that's a writing trick. You're using writing tricks, not musical tricks. And I think that's a different thing, is when you, as a lyricist or as a vocalist, when you understand language and you can kind of play off of it, makes it a lot more fun, and it makes it for really interesting songwriting. It can, like syllables, breaking down syllables. When you hear people extra enunciate things, I'm always like, I never would have thought to do that, but it's interesting that you stretch that out, and now all of a sudden it sounds like another word, or it can rhyme with something that it shouldn't go with at all.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of playing around with the language of language.
That's what rappers do. I mean, they were some of the first to do that. Was, that kind of comes from rap, in my opinion. But we're talking about like the using cursing less. Well, this record, I mean, I fucking pretty much went for it. So, Violation Delight, the whole bridge, I wanted a bridge that was very repetitive and like pretty damn offensive. And so, because I was telling you the act of Violation Delight is like the character's calling up his ex's friend to try to like get back at her or whatever. And so in that moment when he finally does it, there's like the bridge of the song, and it just repeats. It just repeats, feels so good to fuck you over. It does it like, I don't know, 8 or 10 times where I'm just going, feels so good to fuck you over. It just repeats itself. And we've been playing that live for about a year. And so now people will be like, doing that. And it's not even out yet. But it's a cool moment. I wanted to have a moment in a song kind of like the Killer song where they're like, I got soul, but I'm not a soldier. I wanted something like that, but, a little more like of me and grit on there, obviously do it on my own style. And so we'll see how that goes once it's out. But that's one of my favorite moments, is just getting to really say into the microphone, feels so good to fuck you over. Because it's a really, it's like heavy. It's pretty spiteful. But then we break down into this crazy guitar riff, and so it's kind of like a precursor to like the craziness that is coming and is going to happen. So, but that's definitely got me in trouble at a lot of shows and on a couple of tours, because they're like, this guy cusses too much. But I won't really cuss between songs. It's just like, I wrote it like that. So what do you expect, man?
It's weird that we still live in an era where that's a thing.
Oh yeah, I got in trouble on the last one we were on from like a venue saying that it was a family friendly thing, and I was like, okay, well, did you listen to any of my music before you hired me? Because I mean, if you would have looked up like the top, other than Happier Alone, I'm pretty sure like I would say 5 of the top 10 songs that you can find all have that kind of shit in it. But I don't know. I'm sure I'll grow out of it as I get a little older. But it was really
lean
fun.
into it more.
Maybe so. But it's kind of funny, right? It's like, if you're offended by that, buddy, this is going to be a tough world for you. I can tell you that.
It almost makes me wonder if then you'll kind of, because I feel like in the 2 exchanges we've had over the 2 different podcasts now, I feel like maybe if you're like, people thought that was offensive, can I go any further with that? Just to push an envelope just to see if you could, and then be like, well, all right, I made that still somehow catchy, so could I go a little bit further than that?
I definitely had that thought in a lot of the songs on this record, because I felt like the last one was good, but it was still, it's a younger version, of who we are. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it'll become more brutal. I don't know.
What kind of in wrapping some things up so that way you can get to your lunch that I feel bad that you neglected.
Good.
Getting to do this, obviously you're working on what will become probably the next time we talk, and we'll have a conversation about that in a year and a half or so. Where are you excited? What are you most excited about at this point? With this new record, it's done. People are going to finally get to hear it. Like I said, we talked like 2 years ago, and now it's finally coming out. What are you excited most about this record finally being out? But also, what are you most excited to create for the next one on a personal level?
So for the next one, I'm excited that I get to kind of continue some of these storylines. So there will be like, I love putting little, dots of the last record in there. I love that, man. That's really one of my favorite things. And I did it on Black Sheep. So the last record before Black Sheep was called Waves, and there was a song on there called Coming Down, and there was on the song called Waves, it's I'll hold my ground till the come down goes away. And then on the Black Sheep record, I have I think it's on Creeps. I say, a life sentence of a come down. I've lost all the love I used to feel. And so I've been doing that again on these new records. And so I'll put like these little tidbits of characters or sometimes like some words that if you listen to the shit, you're like, oh shit, he brought it up again. You know what I mean? You'll hear that on this new record. In one of the talks, whenever the radio DJs are switching shifts and you're hearing the new DJs, you hear Willie say, oh, someone's got that dopamine drop. And that's a song off the last record, but he's describing the mood of the guy that's like ready to get the fuck out of the office, you know? So I'm pretty excited to do that. I'm really excited to also try to get more into like the sophisticated syllables and continuation of like just harder writing, I guess, right? Like writing stuff that's harder to come up with and not as simple. Though sometimes simple is like the best, right? Like Happier Alone feels like the simplest song I ever wrote in my life. And like that is the one so far that's helped out my career the most. But yeah, for this current record coming out, I'm really excited that, I mean, I know that it's like the best thing that I've ever created with my guys, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm still proud of the Black Sheep record, but I think that this one is like the next step up in maturity, writing wise, playing wise, lyrically, and just the whole idea of everything. And so I'm excited to finally let other people hear that. I was thinking about the same thing the other day. Like, man, it's been my record for like the last year and a half. And I jam that shit all the time. I'm not scared to say it, man. I'm like, damn, I love this shit. I love how we did this, and I love how we did this. Or the writing is so complex. And you know, I'm interested to see if people, if they recognize that, or if it just goes over their head. That's, you know, not necessarily a fear, but it's always fun to see if they actually pick up on it. But I do know that like it's a very fucking unique record, and no one in our immediate circle that you could possibly associate us with, like, and related artists and shit, nobody's doing what we're doing right now. And I'm not saying that just from me. I'm saying like from Willie, our guitar player, from our drummer Aaron, from our producer, and like our whole team. But like the ideas and like the songwriting and the music, like no one in my current circle around me is doing that. And so it goes back to, you know, what genre are we? I don't fucking know. But I'm excited to take a further step into that direction and be like, you thought the last one was different than all this other stuff around me? Well, yeah. You're either going to love this one or hate it, and I love it. So
I think that was the thing as I was listening, because I haven't gotten the full record yet, but I think that was the thing, even listening back to Black Sheep, as someone who really pays attention to the nuances of tones, production, stuff like that. It's weird because like even from a production standpoint, it's like it doesn't fit any one thing. Like it borrows from so many different things that at times I'm like, this guitar tone and the way that this song is, but then like, you know, like the sometimes like the crescendos, as I'll call them, it's like those are almost more rock and metal influence, where it's like here's kind of the bass drop part where it's like and then like impactful, but you don't hear that with usually like these kind of clean, delayed, kind of strummy guitar parts with singing on it. So it's interesting, even from not necessarily the songwriting perspective, but the production element, that it stands on its own to me. Like where it's just like, okay, like what, like I wouldn't have expected a snare tone or drum sounds like that to go over guitars that sound like this, because that's usually not how that sounds.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, even like when you start breaking it down beyond just the songs, and it's like it doesn't literally sound like anything either from a production standpoint, that it's interesting to kind of have it dialed in to that level.
Well, there was certain songs where I was like trying to, I wouldn't say trying to be somebody exactly, but there was a lot of influence taken. I mean, every now and then I did think about Queens of the Stone Age for a couple of guitar parts. I did think about Yellow Card a couple times. I thought about Arctic Monkeys a couple times. I thought about, you know, Whitesnake for one of them. I thought about trying to think. I mean, there were just so many different like times when I was like, ooh, what would this band do here? what do you think this band might do here? There was one on there that I was like, man, this feels like a Sugar Ray song. Like I feel like this is like Sugar Ray, you know, and I love that. So it's just all over the place.
Yeah, I think that's what I think in the day and age now, where sometimes I think bands are afraid to be what I'll call playlist bands. You know, I was actually listening back to it's kind of funny because I just used this analogy the other day, or actually yesterday at work, because Lit came on, My Own Worst Enemy. And I was like, man, I've actually been listening to the shit out of this record lately again. And I was like, but this record, even unto itself, doesn't sound, it's not consistent in any one thing. It's like you can play like a song like Ziploc. Ziploc is kind of a pop punk kind of sound. It's easy, it's catchy. You know, My Own Worst Enemy is kind of more of a straight ahead kind of a thing. Then you got a song like Miserable, great play on words, enunciations and stuff like that. It's kind of more of like a ballad of sorts.
Yeah.
Like there's like kind of heavier riffing on it. It's like it's not any one thing. It's kind of a playlist album where it's like we're kind of into all these things.
That would be a fun band to go on tour with. I think that would be a good matchup. If we went out,
seem
with
like
those
good
guys.
dudes. I know they're down in Nashville quite a bit now that they're sort of like seemingly doing country music now. I don't know.
I don't know, man. Yeah, I met their current drummer a while back at Rocklahoma, and every now and then we shoot each other a message back and forth online, but we haven't got to play any shows together yet or anything. But that's an interesting comparison.
Well, then we'll leave it on that. We'll throw it out into the universe that a Lit Austin Meade tour needs to happen. And I guess this year's almost done. So I guess next year, 2023.
Right on. Hey, we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Where can everyone find you or whatever you would like to plug online?
Grindr, Pornhub. No, I'm kidding. No, it's just Austin Meade, man. Just Meade. Wherever you want to find me. I mean, type it in austinmeade.com or fucking whatever. I'm sure if you Google it, a bunch of embarrassing photos will come up.
I am excited for the eventual Austin Meade.
Yeah, I've had a couple people ask about that, actually.
I figured that was just a throwaway joke.
No, literally, I've had a couple people. I did a podcast with Fred Minnick, and he was asking me when I was going to do one. So I'm down. I'm just trying to figure out how to get all those things done with the short amount of time that I'm given in the day right now. So it'll start to happen soon, though. We're building that team.
You got to build power naps. That's what Seinfeld taught me. Just power naps.
Right.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day. It was great talking to you, and I guess I'll probably see you in about a year and a half. We'll do another one of these.
All right, sounds good. We'll catch you before then on tour, I'm sure.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Later.
So that was my conversation with Austin Meade. I really want to thank him for the time once again and kind of going a little bit deeper, I think, than we did last time. You know, I think it's interesting to kind of get into and pick an artist's brain, especially one that I think is so hands-on with everything like Austin is. I mean, from the creation of his videos to how he writes his lyrics, you know, I think that's the first time I've really heard him break down that, you know, he kind of writes music with an idea of like, this is the story I want to tell. It's not that it's about him necessarily. Like it's kind of an exercise in creative writing. And it was really interesting because when he made the comment, and I've really thought about this since, but when he made the comment, he's like, you know, you see somebody who like writes 5 albums and they're about themselves, and it's like, oh, you must think you're really fucking interesting then if you're going to continue to write about yourself. And it's like, it does make me realize that there are so many artists, I think, and that's why we're seeing bands, I think, readily willing to work with outside songwriters, because I think they've kind of hit the proverbial wall of what they have left to say, and they need someone else to kind of come in and go, okay, like let's spitball ideas, let's work on a concept, let's work on, you know, something to create something, and it kind of reinvigorates the artists themselves. And I think the fact that Austin kind of approaches his songwriting from that, I think it's going to give him the longevity I think he definitely wants out of a career. I mean, he's 10 plus years into a career at this point, but I think it's going to allow him to have that sustained career because he's already thinking more outside the box than I think a lot of other artists in his position would. And I think, again, it comes back to just being honest with yourself. And me personally, I also love the idea that Austin loves the idea of coming up with concepts for music videos and telling stories. And, it is really interesting. It's such a, I don't want to say it's a contradiction, but it's so interesting to see Austin's videos because they are kind of fun. They're kind of campy to a degree, but there's also, like you said, like it's almost like a Trojan horse of sorts for the music itself, and how really kind of when you hear it, and like I said, it's kind of when you actually are taking in what he's saying, you're just like, oh shit, fuck, I can relate to that, and that's really deep, but it doesn't kind of always come across that way. And to me, those are, I think, some of the best artists that there are. The ones that are able to look so far beyond just the little niche of like, well, I'm this artist in this genre, I do these things, or I'm only allowed to do these things. And to see someone like Austin just really push the boundaries of what he can do and what is expected of him, I think is great. And it's, like I said at the end, it really has me excited for the stuff he's already creating now to follow up the record that you all haven't even heard and won't hear for a little bit longer currently. And I've constantly said on this podcast, like, that's the interesting thing to me, is like having to traverse all these different time frames of someone's life of, where the creation and the inspiration for a song came from versus when you're finally getting to hear it and you're so far removed from that. And I think that it's just so wild that he exists in both of these artistic mediums of, I'm still creating in the now, but I'm still kind of excited for the thing that I did a while ago and I'm going to be performing moving forward. It's a space that not many people get to inhabit as artists. So to kind of wrap up my blabbing here and start ending this episode, I really think Austin is one of those kind of unique artists that everyone should be taking notice of. I think he will inspire you in so many different ways, and at the very least, you will be entertained by the music, by the music videos. I haven't seen a live show personally, but I've seen some online, and they just look like a fucking blast. And at the end of the day, that is what going to see live music is supposed to be. It's supposed to be an experience. It's supposed to be something that makes you happy that you got out of your fucking house and went and experienced something that is real. And I think Austin is that. He is the real deal. He is the total package. To kind of wrap up the episode, as I was saying, if you would like to keep up with Austin, you can find him simple enough at Austin Meade Music on Facebook, Austin_Meade at Instagram, and Twitter at Austin_Meade, or you can just go to austinmeade.com, keep up with everything he's got going on. Please go support Austin if he's coming around your area, or, just pick up the new record, listen to it, stream it, whatever it is, buy a shirt, anything. Support Austin. Also want to thank our sponsors, rockabilia.com. Speaking of support, use our code BRUTALLY at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. And our newest sponsor, Starving Artist Brewing Company out of Ludington, Michigan. Go check out all of their stuff. There will be a lot of things we're doing with them. Very excited to have them on. Go support them, onpointpalmade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout. Take 15% off your total purchase order. And last but not least, the Bean Bastard Coffee. Go to thebeanbastard.com, pick up some delicious coffee, hand soaps. They have so many things over there beyond just coffee. If you have a coffee lover in your life, go check it out. Maybe there is a gift idea for you for the holidays that are fast approaching. And with the podcast, you can just simply follow us at Brew Speak Pod on all your major social media platforms. Rate, review, subscribe. You know why that's important. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I'll see you all next time with Darren Miller from XCKY, current 96 Bitter Beings frontman and guitarist. That was a fun chat. Excited to get that one to you. I'll talk to you all then.